All right, good evening all, and welcome to the Tuesday, September 13th meeting of the Finance Committee. We'll begin with introductions and administrative remarks, and we do have an introduction. We have our new Assistant Business Administrator, Missy Klaus, here, so welcome to the committee. Thank you for everything that you'll be doing for us and for the district. Mr. Pauling, would you like to add to that introduction and offer any administrative remarks you have?
First, thank you for introducing Missy. She started with the district last Tuesday. She's hit the ground running. She's got her hands into everything, and she's hard at work getting to learn the district, so she's doing a great job for us so far. Also want to introduce back to our committee Akshay Sethi from the high school. He's our student representative, so we're happy to have you back. So welcome. And just a couple remarks that I have, two things that I wanted to bring up. First off, our first day of school last week, I just want to really send a thank you out to our operational staff. I got to go out and visit every building. The custodial and maintenance department did a fantastic job getting our buildings ready for the first day of school. Our food service department did fantastic with our students. The first day back where all the students were kind of back to normal, going through the lunch line, putting their number in, things that we had gotten away from the last few years. So our food service staff did a fantastic job getting all of our students served and providing meals. And then our transportation department, everybody got to school and home from school safely. I stopped over at the end of the day to see how things were going with the evening runs, and we were able to get everybody back. And I do want to mention specifically Mr. Daniele, who wasn't able to be here tonight. But he did a fantastic job. Thinking about it, this is really was his first day as being the director of the transportation department by himself, kind of managing that first day of school. And he did a wonderful job kind of acting as the general for the department with all the phone calls coming in and on the walkie-talkie with the different buses and drivers and trying to manage everything. He did a phenomenal job, and I just want to recognize him and all of our support staff for what they did last week.
All right, great. Thank you for those remarks, Mr. Pauling. Do we have any public comment? All right, seeing none. Did everyone on the committee have the opportunity to review the minutes, and are there any comments on the minutes? Okay, we will go into our agenda. Under agenda item 4, we have financial action items, items that will be on the regular business agenda. We have, it looks like, a number of agreements that appear to be, for the most part, routine agreements and renewals, the usual disposals and financial reports. Mr. Pauling, is there anything specifically you'd like to walk us through for agenda item 4.1?
Yeah, nothing out of the ordinary. We have some of the agreements there are for professional services on an as-needed basis. So as we need staff from those organizations, from Delta T, Kelly, and GHR, we have these approved so that the rates are in place and we can work with them when we need staffing in the district. Really, we have just some routine disposals. I'll mention on the food service vendors, we have approval for certain commodity categories where we did solicit quotation proposals, and these are the recommended vendors from those proposals that we sent out. Other than that, I have no other comments.
Okay, Mr. Sethi, any questions? I like to give our student representative an opportunity to ask first.
Not right now. Just glad to be back.
And from other committee members, Mrs. Solomon.
Yeah, I did. Just some clarification. So the Chromebooks are being donated, all these Chromebooks? Is that what is happening here? There's like several pages of Chromebooks?
Yes, that's what was given to us. I think, and I can double check on this, but my understanding is that because of the Chromebooks, the limited functionality, there's not really much use for them, and there's not really resale value on them. If they were more of like a PC or especially an Apple-based system, they hold much more value than what a Chromebook does. So in cases like this, if we can find an opportunity to donate them, we do, because they don't have much value. And sometimes because of the recycling, it may cost us money to get rid of those rather than donating them because of the value assigned.
you may not know this, but there's a name on here where we're donating them. Who is that? Or it says Deegan? Is that a person or a company or?
I will have to double check, because I'm not familiar with that.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I just
Yeah,
want, it's
I
a
see-
lot of
I see that on there. Let
equipment.
me-
I just
I'll
wonder.
get an answer for you on that, because it looks like
Okay.
it's cut off too, so I'm not sure if that was the person who submitted the request to us, or if that's
Yeah.
who they're going to.
And I don't know enough about the technology, but we spend a lot on these, so I just, wanted to close the loop. What actually is happening with all that technology?
Okay.
That, I would appreciate that. Yeah, there's several pages. And then there's a list of books. Are these books that we're disposing of?
Yeah, they call the library.
It doesn't say what we're doing with them. It's just a list.
Yeah, so is that the one for the middle school, the 658 books are being donated?
I don't know. It's a list of books.
Oh, no,
There's
sorry.
no title on it. I don't know.
It's a separate page, the cover sheet is a separate page, like the disposal sheet for middle school.
Oh, there's a cover page to that?
Yeah, so it's a separate page.
This is what explains what these books are?
I can't see the colors.
Yeah.
But I know there is a separate page for the disposal for the middle school.
So I'm going to say that I think there's a typo on the form, and here's the reason. On the disposal of books form, the requester is Catherine Horn, so that's Ms. Horn, she's the librarian at the middle school. And it says that there's 658 old library books that we are donating. Normally, we cull them, and oftentimes they are disposed of, but in this particular case, it does say that. But it says it's being donated to Bryn Mawr lawnmower repairs. And maybe that's possible, maybe they're doing a book
No,
drive.
It was probably just a form that was just duplicated over, just put it on. So
Wait,
that
where
was
do you
probably a
see
typo
that?
on the bottom.
Well, that's not the,
what I have.
that's not the
Typo on
right
bottom
form.
of the form that was just for your use, so you can see how many total books there were.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So maybe the question to be is to clarify, where are the 658 old library books going?
Well, the first question was, we're donating these. There's a list, but there's no title, what's
me see that,
happening to
Lydia.
this list.
That,
Yeah,
That's the
so,
list for the
Oh.
middle school library books.
the cover sheet is here, Lydia.
Yeah, there is
There's a cover sheet.
a separate attachment.
yeah, I don't have that, but, okay. So this list is being donated. These are middle school books being donated.
Usually, yes.
Not
Okay.
to us, we are donating them,
Correct.
yes.
I don't have that cover sheet, so.
Yeah, it looks
and
like the
you were
cover sheet
asking who
is
they're
on
being
board
donated
docs,
to?
but not in the paper copies.
Yeah, it's not in the paper copy, so we're donating them to somebody, and you said it might be an
And it was a
incorrect.
typo for the donation and name of the company. So some get donated, some get disposed of. I don't know the exact breakdown.
Okay.
So this is what
Yeah.
gets sent to me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so I just wonder, because these are still, I think, popular books, are we replacing them? I mean, I would hate to see us getting rid of Call of the Wild, like,
So Lydia, we've had the librarian has come periodically, maybe in years that you haven't served here on the Finance Committee, but
Right.
periodically the librarian has come through, and they cull through the library several times a year. So we should find out whether or not those are being disposed of or donated, but they are books that are no longer in good use for us.
okay, but are we replacing these titles? That's actually my
I
question.
will have to get an answer.
Because I would hate to see us, I mean, there's Harry Potter on here. I would hate to see us get rid of this list of books. Maybe we have, maybe they're dog-eared or, I don't know what the story is, but
Well, the
why?
purchase of books is a different process.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
okay.
I just don't want to approve donating this list of books if we're not going to have those books available.
I will have an answer prior to the action meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have two questions on two different contracts.
Go
So
ahead,
It's not
Mrs.
really questions, it's just clarification. So on the Delta Group rate sheet, I know the answer, but it's not as clear as I think it probably should be for approval. It says standard market rate for the paraprofessional LPN, RN teacher, and school psychologist, and they list a rate that I'm quite certain is per hour. The school evaluation must be for per evaluation. If there could just be a notation somewhere that these are hourly rates that we're approving,
it.
except in the case of the evaluations.
Yes.
So that's one thing. And then on the GRH addendum, I know that RBT is, I think, a registered behavioral therapist.
Yes.
If we could make a note of that somewhere so that, we know what RBT is, but for clarity, if we could make note of what that is.
No problem, we can
Thank
make
you.
those changes. Yep.
Any other questions or comments from the committee about 4.1? All right, and I just wanted to acknowledge that there is a donation listed on there. Ms. Sin and Mr. Stinnett are donating, it looks like some a Jora double chamber compost tumbling composter for the watershed program, and the donation is acknowledged and appreciated. All right, with that, we can go to, so we will expect to see these items under 4.1 on the business meeting agenda. With that, we can go to item 4.2, where we are considering an agreement with a vendor bus patrol for stop arm safety. And also, as part of this action item, it looks like there is also an intergovernmental agreement with the municipality related to law enforcement. So, Mr. Pauling, I trust you can walk us through those?
Yes, so I'll spend a few minutes going through some of the history of this, some of the specifics about the program. I'll also introduce Matt Anderson from Bus Patrol. He has traveled from Colorado. Yes, to be with us tonight, to answer any questions that I may not have the answer to. Because I'm excited about this program. We've been working on this for a number of months now. We're trying to get this across the finish line. I think this is going to be a fantastic program for our students and for our community. So I'll give you a little background on this. Back in 2020, there was new legislation passed at the state level. It kind of came out of the Allentown area. There was a push by a parent who had a child that was in an incident with a school bus. Somebody had passed a school bus. The child was injured. I don't know if it was a fatal incident or not. It was, so they were injured. Okay. They worked with Senator Pat Brown up in the Lehigh Valley to get this legislation passed. What the legislation does is it allows a more direct enforcement of school districts, of violators passing school buses when the red lights are on. And so the second part of this is, okay, we need a mechanism to be able to do this. School districts aren't equipped to do this. So Bus Patrol stepped in this capacity, and they've been working with a number of school districts across Pennsylvania and across the country where this is also legislation in place that they can do this, we've been working probably since March and discussing this. And coincidentally, we received a letter from a high school student that actually went to Mrs. Goldman, and they had some concerns about school bus safety, about people passing the school buses. And we responded to the student and said, hey, it's, we take this very seriously, but we're actually looking into something. We're actually looking into a program. And so that went down the months-long process of working through the details with Bus Patrol, reaching out to the Radnor Township Police Department, because that's where the intergovernmental agreement comes into place, and how this all works. So the way that the program would work is we would, through the agreement with Bus Patrol, they would come out and install 4K cameras on the side of the bus near where the red stop arm comes out, and then on the front of the bus. And what that's going to allow us to do is to capture high-resolution images of any violators that would pass a school bus. It only activates once the school bus lights are red, so it's not recording while the bus is traveling on its own. It only activates when the red lights come on. They compile that information, and if there is a violation of the school bus being stopped and somebody goes around it, Bus Patrol captures that information. They compile a video package with all of the information related to the license plate, who violated the bus stop arm, and they send that to the police department. Police department reviews that. They give the okay of whether a violation occurred, and normally at that point it's been filtered by Bus Patrol to go through and to make sure that something actually did occur. It wasn't something tripped on the system that shouldn't have or whatnot. The police department will take a short amount of time to review that. They get back to Bus Patrol saying yes, a violation occurred. Bus Patrol will then issue the citation to the violator. There's a $300 fine that's established within the legislation. Of that $300, $25 goes back to the police department for their time. $25 goes into a state fund that was established for safety initiatives, and then the other 250 comes back to the district. And then through the agreement, we would split that 60% going to bus patrol, 40% going to the district. And what that 40% does is it offsets the cost of the equipment. So the best part of this is that there's no outlay of funds from the district upfront for the equipment. There's no burden on our taxpayers to buy the equipment that's going to go onto the buses. It's fronted by bus patrol, and it's paid through the citations. It's paid through the violators who are passing the school buses. And then over time, we use our portion of that revenue share to offset the equipment. So the question would be, well, what happens if we don't collect enough? We're assuming we will, and if we don't, the agreement states that at the end of the agreement, if we feel that it's not worthwhile and we want to terminate at the end of 5 years, we can do that with bus patrol. They come in and remove the equipment, and there's no outlay of funds to the district. So there's no risk for us if we don't collect enough money to pay costs at the end of the contract to offset the equipment that was installed.
So I definitely
That's my
have,
question. Yeah.
well, no, I have two questions.
Mrs. Stern, if you don't mind, may we ask Mr. Sethi if he has a question?
Oh, I'm
first?
sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
And it's all right if you don't, just like to give you the
Oh, no,
opportunity.
I don't
before
have
we
a
jump.
question, but I've seen my fair share of people passing school buses when they're stopped, so I think this is a valid issue.
All right, fair. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
For
I'm
your
so
indulgence,
sorry.
Mrs. Stern.
Well, the, the scenario I'm envisioning in my mind is the bus is stopped and a car coming from the opposite direction blows through the line, the arm. Is that the typical scenario?
It is. So the NASDAQ stats, the news study that from 2021 to 2022 actually just came out last Thursday, and it was, I think it was 67% of cars are the exact scenario that you said, and 33% are same direction as the bus.
Okay, so
you're
maybe a
correct.
multi-lane road.
Correct. So
Okay.
we can capture up to 8 lanes worth of traffic.
Great, so here's the issue. In Pennsylvania, we don't have a license plate on the front of the car. How are you catching the license plate?
Yes, so we capture both front and rear. So as well as a video of the full incident itself. So we have 4K pictures as well as a 4K video of every incident that occurs. So that way when we give it to police, we give them the still pictures of the front, side, and rear of the vehicle as well as the video of the full incident.
Oh, great, okay, thank you, that was one question. And then just, a Radnor bus is traveling in Lower Merion, picking up students, or dropping students off somewhere. Lower Merion gets the money or Radnor gets the money?
So it would only go to it's the district buses. So you would get it, but it's once we get a MOU or an intergovernmental agreement executed with those townships, that's when we have the authority to operate within those townships, which we are in Lower Merion. So as these programs, so in the Philadelphia side of the eastern side of Pennsylvania, we have about 25 different districts who are on board or currently getting installed. So as those townships get more evolved and they get in certain areas, then once that bus goes into a different township, we can execute citations in that township. But if we don't have an intergovernmental in that township, then we have to throw those citations out because we have no jurisdiction to enforce those.
So that was my question. And then who is the recipient of that revenue? That intergovernmental agency?
So the $25 for police would go to that
Correct.
township police, but the $250 would go to you or whoever's
No,
bus.
that part I understood.
Yeah, okay.
And so so arguably, whether or not we were to go forward with the cameras, you might be interested in entering an intergovernmental agreement with the Radnor Township Police Department on behalf of others. So, in this area, it's not uncommon for school buses of one community to be in another community, just the way our busing system works. So you arguably want an intergovernmental agreement with the police regardless of
Everyone.
what our decision here.
Correct.
I see. Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate that.
So I need this explained to me, how the finances work. So we're not in a contract with you. Just run me through that again. Like, we're not paying anything up front. We're not paying $37,000.
Correct, yes. So we're making an assumption in that payment model of the revenue that we're gonna receive monthly, so I can walk you through it.
Okay, so this is like a sample
Yes.
year? Is this a year?
So
Oh,
this is
a
monthly. So I'll let Matt talk about the specifics. The way that the whole model works is the assumption is that we will have enough violators of this, that it will pay for the costs. And so that's where, Matt and I were talking earlier of how this looks from our level, but also from a national level, from their business model and the statistics that they've seen, that we are making the assumption, and we're very comfortable that we will have enough people that we will capture by this, that it will offset those costs and offset what they're putting out.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're looking at those thinking there's no chance, right? That's because that's what we usually get when we put these summaries together. But the NASDIP stats that just came out, so 10 years ago when those first stats came out, it was 0.78 violations per bus per day nationally. Now, 9 years later, it's 0.69. So basically 0.7 times per day per bus and a violation actually occurs. Those numbers that we showed you guys on there is at 0.2. So we try to be highly conservative when we put those statistics together for you all, basically setting the bar as low as possible, showing you what the true problem is and how we can have enough money to fund these types of programs.
I don't understand this point two. I see 200 as a quantity. You're
Yes.
saying that's a percentage of something?
So we take the buses times 0.2 times 18 operating days per month, and that's where that 200 comes from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's just an average, just an estimate based off our national stats. And then in Pennsylvania, we recently, as of June of last year, late June last year, we took some samplings of all of our Pennsylvania specific accounts, and it came out to 0.33. So again, we use 0.2, again, to be
Okay.
conservative, but our
So-
Pennsylvania, I think we have 2,200 buses. We'll have about 3,000 buses installed by the end of this month. But at that time, it was about 2,200 buses installed, and it was at 0.33.
All right, so this might sound kind of obnoxious to you, but I think we should get the 60% and you should get the 40%. Tell me how you justify that.
Because we front all the costs. So it's not only hardware costs. So when we go out to build a system, we don't have to make it affordable. So the idea that we can just go out there and build the best technology available. So our camera system, if you compare it to anybody else in the school bus industry, we're about 3.5, 4x technology cost-wise what they are. And then that also includes our people. So we call it a program for a reason, because we do all the evidence capturing, we do all the evidence reviewing, we work with courts, we work with PD, we put the evidence packets together, we do collections, we basically handle the entire program, and we're the only company that does it this way. Other companies that do something similar will basically capture a picture and send you the picture, and then they still have to have that police go and knock on that person's door. They have to prove that they were driving, and there's a whole enforcement program that goes through there where we handle that entire process. So that 60% basically goes to not only cover our people, but also the airtime, and then the program standpoint from the people, the court costs, and all that stuff that we incur.
So you kind of just said this is a monopoly on your part, but is this percentage breakdown negotiable? Because I don't think you should get 60%. It just doesn't seem fair. So is it negotiable, this percentage?
Above
with
my
us?
pay grade. But I can absolutely ask.
Well, I'm going to say I don't think that's a fair split. This is, this is our community. We're going to be finding our constituents, which might, make people upset, even though they are violating the law. So that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I do have two more quick questions. Anecdotally, Mr. Pauling? It is. Anecdotally, Mr. Pauling, do our bus drivers report these kinds of numbers with regard to, with bus drivers, with drivers actually doing this?
So I don't have specific details, but Mr. Daniele's been working with me on this, and so just anecdotally, this is happening quite frequently with our buses.
Wow.
I don't have specific data, that we keep track of, but when we started working on this, it is being reported back through the drivers to him that, this is an issue, and we try to, if we can, capture that information after the fact and get it over to the authorities, but it's an after the fact, and we don't have video evidence of it like we would on a system like this. It is anecdotal, like you said.
My last question is this: do we have a responsibility? Are we supposed to let people in our community know that we're going to be starting this program? Kind of like red light cameras, you have to put a red light camera light a sign, I think you have to put them up at those intersections. So what's the responsibility with regard to notification?
Yeah, so we have a full PSA program, and again, that's part of that 60%, is that we run a full media campaigns through the entire 5 years. So we run Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn ads, we'll do paid media, earned media, news articles, anything. We'll come to meetings. We actually also have in-classroom education that we can teach students about the danger zone of the bus. You know, be careful around 10 feet around the bus, what the driver's hand signals mean, look both ways when you cross the street for the younger kids. So we put together all of these media campaigns on your behalf. Of course, we send them to you, and we work with your media relations team to stamp and approve them before we send them out, or if you'd like to send them out, absolutely. But we handle the entire thing, so the community is aware of the program before it goes live, as well as the full 5 years. We're constantly putting out information about how important it is. Here's the new NASDIP surveys. Here's, you know, a close call, that kind of stuff. Basically, the goal is to educate people either way. So educate them through a citation, because 98% of our people who get one citation do not get a second. So most people just don't know the law, or they don't know what the rules of the law are. So once we show them what the law is, they don't get a second ticket, or we educate them through the PSAs and kind of that community awareness. Our programs, on average, again, drive down about 35% year over year for the first 3 years, and about 15 to 20% that fourth and fifth year. And then most end up right around that 0.2 number I referenced earlier. That's where most of our programs just live. Because we always have new people turning 16, new people coming into the community, there's always going to be somebody violating it. But we get it down from, like in Allentown, when we first started this program, they're averaging over 2 violations per bus per day. We just did was it 8-week or 10-week pilot with Pittsburgh Public Schools. They were at 0.9 for the full 8 weeks. So we can take those 0.9s, and get those down to 0.2, which is a huge reduction over 3 to 5 years.
Maybe somebody said this and I didn't catch it. So what happens, like Lancaster's a 4-lane, 2 lanes each way. So somebody's passing, so the bus is, all right, say it's going westbound. Somebody passes on the eastbound side. Are those people going to be violating?
So my understanding is, if I'm trying to remember my traffic laws, unless there's a physical divider, if there's just a yellow line and they pass, then they would be in violation. It would capture that.
So there could be like 2 lanes. Okay. Well, I guess this isn't really in our township, but like Route 3 has a divider. So then if the bus is stopped westbound, the traffic can keep flowing on eastbound.
Correct.
It could, and if it would capture that on the cameras, that's where their service would filter that out and wouldn't go to the police department for the citation.
I think we really need to tell people this. Like, I think we all know this, but like I stop on Route 3, and I guess now I don't need to, but I didn't know that, you know? So we kind of need to tell people more about it, I think, before we start fining them. That's just my...
Well, the good thing is because, and we'll
Feeling.
talk about this, the time that if the contract is approved, it would take to get the installation, and that's where we start the media campaign and getting the information out to everybody that these are going to be installed later the year. And, you know, this is coming, and here's some refresher on traffic safety laws and all of those type of
And
things.
you said you guys do all that. Did I hear that
100%.
right?
Yes. So
Okay.
let's say if we said yes today, then next week, 2 weeks from now, whenever we had time for us, we would start introducing that media campaign. So that would be out there 30, 60, 90 days before we ever send a citation out. So we're getting that education out there way prior to the program ever going live. And that's our goal, is to educate before the program goes
And
live.
clarify for me another situation, sorry. So say you have a 4-way stop, so a bus is going, say, westbound at a stop sign. So is everyone at that intersection supposed to stop if the bus is stopped before the stop sign?
They should, correct. They don't have to, so the vehicles going in front of the bus can technically go if it is a stop sign, because they're not passing the
So
bus.
say you're stopped, say you're heading south, so you would just be making a right turn, and the bus is stopped at the thing, at their stoplight? You're not supposed to go. The bus is stopped at a stop sign heading west, so before the intersection. Somebody's coming south and is going to make a right turn, basically in front of the bus
Yeah.
at the stop sign. They stop. Are they not allowed to go in front of that bus?
They shouldn't, no. But again, I'm trying to picture exactly what, but.
Because I will tell you, the bus drivers flag people on.
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
so if a bus driver flags you on and they're stopped, that's fine.
That goes back to an education piece. So we have an internal camera system, which is optional. So we can provide internal cameras for the program, or we can just basically see the driver through the 4K camera. If they wave a car on, and
Yeah.
if they weren't supposed to, then that's something that we would.
Well, are
send
they
back
allowed
the
to
team.
wave a car on and that wouldn't be a citation?
They're not.
I don't think the driver would have the authority to
They're not
do that. I
supposed
mean,
to. but
they
do.
can wave them on, but I think as far as a citation scenario, they don't have that authority to, waive what the actual law is.
But we would
Okay,
take that
well,
into
these might
account.
be things we're going to deal with.
Yeah, we would take that into account, and when we're reviewing the citations, if we have any hesitations, like if a car is coming up to the school bus's bumper and then they flip those reds on and they keep going, we throw those out, because we know if it goes to court, we're probably gonna lose that court battle. So we just throw all of those out on the front end, that if we have any questions, because there are so many from a financial standpoint, we can throw out any of the hesitation ones on the front end, just because it happens so frequently that there's enough financially to support the program for those who actually do blatantly run it. And we'd be happy. So we put together a pilot video for Pittsburgh. Be more than happy to send it to, just to give you an example of what the cameras look like and how often this happens. It's alarming.
I would be stunned if it's happening at that frequency in Radnor. I'm out there driving a lot around bus time. I don't see a lot of this, but I believe you. I mean, but more, I guess more information. Thank
Dr.
you.
Babson?
Sure. I mean, let's just get it out there that I think we're all for increased safety. I don't think anyone's against that. But I share some of the concerns, just very practical concerns about, I think even the four of us up here, and everyone else at the table would probably not have a extremely clear idea of what the law is around these things.
I'm clear on the law, and I don't break it.
Well, I think what Lydia's bringing up, sorry, but I'm with Lydia in the sense that there are some cases that are a little bit ambiguous, I think.
Oh, I agree, but I personally am a person who errs on the side of caution on that.
Sure,
That's all.
Absolutely.
I know, but we might be causing an accident on people are traveling 50 miles an hour. I'm stopping, but I'm not supposed to. Somebody's gonna crash into me, right?
So for example, on you mentioned 8-lane road, right? So if I'm making this up, obviously, but I mean, if a bus is all the way on the other side there, and I mean, it seems a little ambiguous to me about, if I'm going the other way and the bus is all the way over there, what does that stop? What is the sort of the purview of the stop sign? What is it sort of? I think you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, so each state's different, right? Each state's different, each law is different. So with the 8-lane, that's mostly in states like Florida or states that have these big roads. We don't have a lot of those here, but most of the states, just again being very general, if there is a divider, a median of some point, that's when that doesn't, the opposite way traffic does not need to stop. Right. But again, if there's in some states like Pennsylvania, if there's a turning lane, that you don't need to stop. If there's not a turning lane, it's just a yellow line, you do need to stop. So there's those different law things, and that's part of the education that we put out there. Is we put out these clear graphics. We have music videos, we have videos for kids, we have all kinds of stuff that we put out there to help publish and try to get these. We have a couple songs that just sit in my head all the time because I hear them.
Yeah, what song?
I'll send
Please.
it to you so you can sing it all day. But it's these very catchy things. It's, how a lot of people learn is these repetitive songs and stuff that come through. And then as you're in that situation, that song's playing in your head, and that's what draws you awareness to that.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Good.
each state's just a little bit different.
Okay. Good. I mean, I commend Susan. I commend you for knowing precisely what to do. But I mean, in my case,
Err on the side of caution.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I think
When I realize I'm violating the law by doing it.
I think our intent with this is, we don't want to be like, the gotcha, for people that maybe there's a misunderstanding, and we'll review those on a case-by-case basis. We're trying to prevent those people that we've all seen that go flying around a bus. They don't care whether they're students walking across the street or not, and I believe there are enough of those violators that will help And as far as the logistics of this program from the financial standpoint, this is not something that we're looking to do to catch somebody on a technicality because we're going to generate revenue from this.
Yeah.
My goal with this is the administration bringing this forward is we have the opportunity to enter an agreement to get equipment at no cost to us to put on our school buses to make our students safer.
Yeah, so let me just say real quick, my next-door neighbor was killed by a bus, by a car that came around a bus when we were kids. So this hits a little close to home to me. I fully support the idea of doing this. That is probably the reason I err on the side of caution, Dr. Babson. And I look at it the same way you do, Mr. Pauling. We have an opportunity to have the equipment, and yes, there is going to be a financial benefit, but the bigger thing I'm really happy to hear about is that the repeat offenders are very rare. People probably, I like to think the best of people, and people probably make this mistake, are horrified
They're not
that they
going to.
did it,
Yeah.
and they really learn from it. And that, if that's going to keep kids safer, great, you know? And and I didn't get the impression from the paperwork that we as a district would actually be involved in this intergovernmental agreement. We will be the venue by virtue of having the cameras on the buses, but this is the work of your company and the law enforcement. And if a police officer happened to be sitting there at the time that a person breaks the law and goes through, that police officer could just as easily be giving the $300 ticket. That is a law on the books. People want us to take this seriously. This is just an opportunity because, we can't have the law enforcement at every situation. So I think this is great, and if we don't think it works for us, we can make a different choice. But I do support this. Thank you.
Mr. Sethi, do you have a question as well? Or comment?
Yeah, just two comments, actually. As Mr. Pauling was saying, I feel that the ultimate goal of the program is not to collect revenue, it's just the safety of community and students. And in response to Dr. Babson and Ms. Solomon, oh, sorry, I just forgot what I was going to say. I'll get back to you later.
Oh, sure, no problem. I have a couple questions. I'm sure it'll come back to you. I've read through this, but either Mr. Anderson or Mr. Pauling, could you summarize what the outs are if we try it and we decide it's not working for us? What does it look like to unwind it, and do we incur any costs for that?
So,
5 years, right?
yeah, so it's a 5-year agreement, and that's in order to allow time to recoup those costs. And I think there's, in most cases, probably about a 2-year or so turnaround where, based on the assumption of the citations. But if we keep these in place for 5 years, we decide at the end of the 5 years that, hey, this just isn't working for us, they will come and collect the equipment back, and there's no outlay of funds from the district standpoint. If we don't collect enough revenue to offset the cost, they're assuming the risk as part of this.
And if we decide we hate it after 2 years, what happens then? I'm not implying that we will, but we want to know what kind of potential liability we're incurring by entering into this.
No, so those are part of the solicitor's comments, so we can work out through negotiations in the agreement what some of those quote-unquote outs could be. We have cancellation for cause, and we have a bunch of stuff already in there that we can further define based off of what your guys' judgments are.
Okay, so that might be something that would be valuable between now and the business meeting if we, in fact, want this on the agenda then. Just how can we protect us in future years, depending on if things go away we don't expect. And Mr. Anderson, if I'm understanding this, the company still owns the equipment and collects it back in 5 years. It's always the company's property, these cameras. It's not the district's property, even after we enter an agreement.
Correct, and that's kind of how this industry is going. Really, this space is. It's because after 5 years, you can't really get much for the technology anyway. So let's say that everything goes beautifully after 5 years, we want to enter into another agreement, whether that's year to year, 5 years, whatever those terms are to be determined later. But we would always let you guys have the latest and greatest technology, whether that's through firmware updates to the existing technology or just coming out there, taking the hardware off and reinstalling it with the latest and greatest hardware, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now. You guys, through the contract, are always guaranteed the best and latest equipment.
And does the company also own the data, the images?
No, so all of that's up to you. So everything's owned, and I'd be happy to send you those documentations, but everything's owned by the district or PD. So any of the internal camera data is owned by the district, just like it with any other vendor. All the external camera data is owned by the PD. We basically just house it, and nothing is stored unless it's collected for a citation. So if all those hours of video that we're collecting when the buses stop arms out, those get rewritten over every 30 days unless there's a citation, at which point we capture that, we send that to PD, and we keep that for 60 days. And we keep that for 60 days only in case there's a subpoena or that video can be used for another course of action through the PD outside of our citation. But if they determine after 60 days that's not needed, we just throw those out as well. So there's no long-term videos kept once that. I should say the only time there is if somebody contests it, and let's say that court hearing's 3 months out, we may hold that for 90 days, that kind of thing. But those are all one-offs.
And that overriding policy made me think of something else. What kinds of protections are there for privacy, capturing images of things that aren't license plates of cars passing buses?
Yeah. So again, nothing's kept unless it's an incident that's actually kept. But on the inside of the video, so if we have to, let's say that an incident happens, we've had a couple recently. We had one where a parent tried to fight the bus driver, and we had another one where there's a group of about 10 kids waiting to fight a kid on the bus. In both incidents, through our different camera systems, we can stitch together 2 or 3 videos to show that car pulling up or those kids pulling up, and then different views of that same incident. And what we do is we blur out the students' faces for who weren't involved in the incident, and we can supply you with that video based off of those privacy acts. So that way you don't have to do that, spending time and resources. We present you with that, or PD, with that kind of final video based off of those privacies that you all determine.
Right, and so I almost see 2 ways to think about this. Do we want to be in the business of capturing other things and using it for things like student discipline? Is that more power than we want? I think we'd want to think about that, and maybe we don't have an answer to that now. But if we are capturing all of these data through these images, and we can blur out faces that are not involved in a non-traffic incident, do we still want to be using these cameras for things that are not traffic incidents? So that's a question for you, Mr.
Real
Anderson.
quick,
but
just
you're-
to clarify, so
Sure.
those items would be only part of the internal camera system, which is completely optional. So the
Yeah, which
internal
are
and
not
external are
ins-
completely
yeah,
separate.
these- Yeah, and
Yeah.
so this would only, these cameras would only be used in a circumstance where an incident happened while the red light was out on the bus.
No, I
So
understand that. Outside of the
coincidence-
bus while it stopped, not inside the bus.
Correct, yeah.
Wait,
But I did think I read that the use of this was limited only to the enforcement of the traffic ticket.
For our particular agreement, because we are just using the external cameras.
Right, yes, that's what I'm comfortable with.
So we're not going to have internal cameras, like, even if when the bus red light goes on, there's not going to be any internal image?
No, I think we already do have internal cameras on our own system, but since we have them in place already, we wouldn't need them through
Don't
bus
need
patrol.
this. Got it.
Yeah, school districts have been using cameras inside buses for many, many years. And it has been just like the cameras we use in our hallways. They have been very helpful when incidents happen. No one wants to be Big Brother, but the cameras in our buildings, the cameras on our buses help protect our kids and help in situations and safety. And we look up, we will access that information when there is an incident or something has happened.
And Mr. Pauling, I take it from the fact that we have this intergovernmental agreement, we've already spoken with the township. Have they, in addition to being willing to enter into this with us, have they given an opinion on whether they would like this and they think it's a good idea?
So I've talked to Chief Flanagan and the Highway Patrol officers, and they are in support of this. The intergovernmental agreement is in their hands for their legal review, so we're just waiting for final approval from them. So it doesn't necessarily stop our process of getting the agreement signed, because there are clauses in the contract that if that doesn't get approved, then we can't move forward with this. So it is in legal review, and Mr. Christofko did review both agreements for us already before we presented them.
So I have a request for you. Would you kick it up the line at your company to ask if we can negotiate those percentages? Thank you.
And it sounds like, relatedly, just a few questions about further defining some of the out clauses would be, I think, appreciated.
Yep.
Mr. Sethi, I wanted to loop back to you, give you a chance in case you had further comments or you thought of what else you were going to say before.
Yes, it did come back to me. This was about the scenarios Dr. Baps and Ms. Lydia Solomon were talking about. As he was saying, every state, every township is completely different. So I think maybe after a few months to a year of implementing the program, we'd be able to work out all the kinks specific to Radnor. Like, once again, this is a trial and error basis. So.
And just one summing up question, Mr. Pauling. If this is the right thing to do, to have cameras so that we can identify drivers who go past when the stop sign is about, what is devil's advocate? Why is this solution? Why don't we buy our own cameras and do it ourselves, refer it to our local law enforcement? We're not a big district.
Make
You know, what's,
dollars
you know,
ourselves.
what makes bus, you know, with all respect to Mr. Anderson, what makes bus, I'm agreeing there's a problem. Mr. Sethi, I agree with you. I see this happen. I've seen it happen. If this is a problem, why is this vendor agreement the solution as opposed to us doing it in-house or through a different technology solution?
So I think one is the upfront cost. We'd have to outlay the upfront cost for all of the equipment. We'd have to make sure that the equipment is being serviced, so we'd have ongoing costs for that. We'd have to update the equipment periodically as technology improves, so that's a big lift for us. I may equate it also back to, sometimes when these questions come up, we're in the business of educating students, right? So I'm not going to profess to be the expert on school bus camera systems and security technologies. That's why we work with vendors like Bus Patrol to come in and assist us with doing those things so that we can focus on what we are doing on a daily basis. That, you know, we have a good partner that I believe we're entering in with, that's done this presentation with quite a number of districts in southeastern PA that have already started implementing the program. Had a very successful pilot at Allentown School District when this first started. So I have no reservations with entering into an agreement with them and knowing that, you know, I feel we'd be in good hands with having them manage a program like that for us.
All right, thank you. And I thought of one other more specific question about something I saw in the agreement.
Sure.
It's it says that it will equip the entire fleet of 60 buses. If something changed and we needed more buses for some reason, for example, if we ended up doing healthy middle school start times and flipped the elementary times, we would need a few more buses for that. If the number of buses in the fleet changed, would we renegotiate this, or is there a way to write this to kind of capture our bus usage if it changes?
So that
Get your consistency, Mr. Moore.
So, from my understanding, we would be able to adjust that number. It was locked into the estimate on the current fleet that we have now, but if we did have to adjust the number of buses, it wouldn't require a reopening of the agreement to do that.
Correct. Yep. So as the fleet changes up or down, the agreement will change, and we just send you an amendment that we both execute, whether it's 57 or 63 or whatever that number looks like. The technology fee would also amend at that time, and we both basically agree on that new number. But do you mind if I touch on your previous question?
Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I'll be quick. But so programs like us are very important. So in 2018, the last time the stats were collected in Pennsylvania, there was a total of 667 citations executed in all of 2018-2019 school year on 16,000 buses. When we ran a pilot in Allentown on 2 buses, we captured 205 citations. So the missing gap of what's happening versus what's actually being executed is extremely significant. And the reason being is that, one, drivers stopped basically collecting these because they have the frustration. They realize that nothing's going to happen if they do execute it. If they get 5 of 6 license plate numbers, they realize that's not enforceable. So drivers get upset with this, but they realize there's no answer. So they just stop caring about it other than honking their horn, trying to protect the students the best they can in that moment. That's where we come in. We get things from the drivers every day. If you look at our Facebook page, 99% of it is drivers thanking us for the program and parents thanking us for the program. So it's that missing gap is where we come in. And then also on the law enforcement side. So when they get a violation, a potential citation from us, it takes them about 30 to 60 seconds to review and make a determination. If they get a note from a driver, so if you got your own cameras and you sent that to law enforcement, on average it's 4 to 6 hours with an execution rate less than 8%. Ours is 30 to 60 seconds with an uptake rate of 98%. So we have less than 2% of people actually contest these. So people choose people like us because the violations actually go down. We cover 100% of the costs, and we also do the community awareness of that program.
And without our administrative burden of working with the police to do it ourselves.
Exactly. And then they don't have enough people as it is. So taking someone else off the street for 4 to 6 hours a day to go track down somebody who may or may not have been in the car at that time with a less than 8% success rate, they stopped caring about these as well. So that's really it. So had to get that in there.
And one thing I want to add on the violation side of things, so the difference between this program is the person who violates the law gets a $300 monetary fine. The police captures them doing it and they receive a citation from the police department. There's 5 points on their license. So that's the difference. Some people may not be happy that they got caught passing a bus, but they're paying a monetary fine versus the points penalty that they would receive if an officer had captured them. So that's the difference between these.
All right, any other questions or comments? Anything else for Mr. Anderson or Mr. Pauling?
Thank you.
All right, thank you for taking the trip out to help us with our questions.
Very much. I'm going to leave some business cards. Can I leave one with you? In case you have any questions, please email, call me anytime.
Feel free, thank you.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it. Well, Mr. Pauling, it looks like we are not done, and there is another item on the agenda,
get there.
4.3, the Radnor Township Deputy Tax Collector Agreement.
Yes.
And so the recommended action is recommending the resolution appointing Mr. Brian Pauling as Deputy Tax Collector be moved to the full board for approval at the September 27th meeting. So what does that mean, Mr. Pauling, for you to be the Deputy Tax Collector, and how are we able to do this?
So logistically, it doesn't change anything. We're already collecting the taxes in-house. Myself and Jackie are, mostly Jackie, I'll give her the credit. She survived August at the end of our discount period. So what this does is we pay a fee, we're required by law to set a rate of what we pay per tax bill to the local tax collector. It's 25 cents per bill, so it's approximately $2,500 that we're required by law to pay out in compensation. Mr. Froelich, who is the elected tax collector for the township, we've been in discussions, and because we are taking on the primary amount of the work, the calls are coming into us. We have the lockbox service. We're taking the collections on site. He felt that being compensated for work that he was really not doing logistically wasn't right. And so, in speaking with Mr. Christofko, our legal counsel, what this agreement will do is will deputize me as the tax collector officially, and then in the agreement, it would forego the payment of the cost per bill to Mr. Froelich, and the understanding that as the deputy tax collector, I'm assuming that responsibility, and then I'm foregoing that payment to myself. I'm just absorbing that within the office as part of our duties. So this will legally, through Mr. Christofko's opinion and working with him, allow us to still collect the taxes like we do now. Like I said, the logistics will not change. It will just forego the payment of the tax collection to Mr. Froelich, and we would just keep that money each year. We tried to work out a solution so that we weren't paying Mr. Froelich, and then he had to report it as income, and he would donate it back to the school district. So we felt this would be the best manner to do that and still accomplish what we needed to do.
So I have an overarching structure question about this. There's no schoolhouse rock about the difference between the municipality and the treasurer and our school district. Mr. Froelich, the current treasurer, is elected. He is not part of the township. He's a separate elected position. It is he that is appointing you, so
That's correct.
This agreement is us authorizing you to accept the appointment. So we are not appointing you deputy tax collector. Mr. Froelich, who is currently the treasurer, is appointing you deputy tax collector.
Correct, yes. So he would be the one to officially sign off on that. The agreement is establishing the parameters for what my responsibilities are, and just, in writing, that we would have that agreement with him to have that relationship. But in another situation, he could deputize a tax collector, and there's a form that we would file with the DCED, the Department of Community of Economic Development, but that wouldn't forego the compensation portion of this. So that's why we have this agreement in place to handle that piece of it as well.
And my copy might be missing a page, which I read online, but I don't have it in paper right now, so pardon me if I forgot. Is there a time frame? Is this an annual appointment? Is this so long as the current treasurer serves? I just wanted some clarity on that.
Yes, it's in the agreement that so long as Mr. Froelich and I are both in our positions, that it would continue. So if I would leave the district, if another business manager, which I'm not planning on doing, but if another business manager would come on board, a new agreement would need to be signed. If Mr. Froelich resigns or at the end of his election cycle decides not to run again and someone else is elected, then we would reintroduce a new agreement. But it would continue as long as he and I are in our current positions.
All right, thank you. We'll expect to see this on the business meeting agenda as well.
And just to clarify, I'm
Mr.
working
Pauling, yeah.
out with the details with Mr. Froelich. He does have this in his hand, so we're just, some of the bonding numbers are blank, so we'll just work out from his end, from the bonding company, what the adequate amount is. We kind of talked about that earlier, so it's just, basically whatever he's bonded for, it'll carry over to myself, and I didn't have that information to enter onto the agreement, so.
And, go ahead,
Who
Mrs. Sullivan.
pays for the bonding?
They'll take care of it, it's on their side.
They?
The
Oh,
tax, on Mr.
The
Froelich's side.
township? No.
It's paid for,
Well, your bonding is paid for by the district.
mine is, yes. So his would be paid for by, good question, because he is collecting taxes for multiples. I'll have to find out. I don't remember off the top of my head.
And relatedly, the township does not need to sign off on this. This is
Correct.
him appointing you as deputy tax collector for purposes of school district taxes. It has nothing to do with the municipality's taxes.
Correct. Yes, they would, and that's outlined in the agreement, that is just for the school district's real estate tax collection. If the township wanted to have a separate agreement, and that would be totally on them.
Which they actually do. They've done the similar thing. Their business manager has been, Mr. Froelich appointed him to be the deputy tax collector for the town. So it's the same type of thing.
Okay, great. So that takes care of item 4.3.
Can,
Oh,
I-
go ahead. Dr. Babson, I did
Sure.
not see that you had a
No,
question or
no,
comment.
no.
Please pardon me.
No, it's fine. I mean, these are just sort of just clarifying questions. So overall then, Mr. Pauling, the purpose of this is more logistical or, logistical facilitation? Is that the added benefit of this?
I don't know if logistical, probably not, because again, the logistics of the tax collection aren't changing. I think it's just more, maybe in the logistics of the payment, in the compensation for the tax collector. Again, in putting it in writing that by the deputization process, I would then be, as the deputy, collecting the taxes, but foregoing the payment to myself and to Mr. Froelich, per bill that we establish every 4 years.
Okay, so if you just had to sum up in a sentence or two the purpose of this, what would you say?
This is to officially appoint me as the deputy tax collector and to allow the district to forego any compensation related to the responsibilities.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks.
Welcome.
All right. Everyone good on that? Looks like we're a minute or two over time, but of course, we would still entertain any new business that committee members have, if they would like to raise any.
I do have one other item.
Mr. Pauling, yes, go ahead.
So this is more informational. We just received word that the state is going to be subsidizing free breakfasts across the Commonwealth starting October 1st. So as you recall, the federal government had, during the years of COVID, subsidized free lunches and breakfasts. That ended at the end of last school year. Continued in the summer for some, but in essence, it ended at the end of the school year. The Commonwealth, through funds that they had allocated from the prior year, decided to subsidize free breakfast across the Commonwealth from October 1st until the end of the 22-23 school year. So just to give you some of the impact on our district, last year, our total subsidy that we received from the federal government, a small portion from the state, was subsidized at about $190,000. So students were able to get free breakfast. We recorded that. We submitted it for reimbursement. We received $190,000 in reimbursement. So we've had a month of kind of status quo paying for breakfast. So that number should be similar to what we'd receive back from the state at the end of this year if the numbers are similar to what they were last year.
So they're only sponsoring free breakfast, though, not free lunch?
Correct, just breakfast. Yeah. So I just wanted to present that as an informational item that we'll be putting that in place through those monies from the state on October 1st.
No, that's great. I think I'm glad to hear the state's doing that, and it'll certainly be helpful here in Radnor as well. All right, that concludes new business. Is there any public comment? All right, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
I'm not sure I want to pay for free breakfast for everybody.
You know, I was gonna say something to that guy, like,